Welcome back, everyone. We're here at the Writer's Parachute, where we're guiding author and writer dreams to a perfect landing. Today, we have another very special guest with us. We have Allan Goff. He is a physicist, engineer, and author, and we're going to be talking to him soon about his book, Discovering the Rules to 3D Chess. So it's a very exciting book. It's coming out very, very soon, and I want to talk to you about it. But of course, before we get started, we always have our topic that we're going to discuss. And of course, we want you to stay till the end because we are going to pull the ripcord on the tip of the week at the end of the show. So that will be after our interview with Allan. So let's start with our topics. Today, we're going to talk about how do you choose a title? How do you choose a subtitle? Do you know the difference between a tagline and a log line? Do you know the difference between a series title? So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So the big one here is a title. What do you do to choose a title? Choose a title. So what I would say is when you're choosing a title, you need to think about what is going to catch your audience. Because again, your title, your cover design, your back cover copy, all of these things are actually marketing tools. They are what get your book into the hands of the reader. They're the first thing that they see, and generally either the title will spark the curiosity, something on the cover will spark the curiosity, or something included in your back cover copy will spark that curiosity, that intrigue, that need to get that book and read it. So they're very important. So thinking about the title is exclusively about the intersection between your audience and what you're writing about. So I want you to think about that. Remember to think about, does it include intrigue? Does it include curiosity? It could also include humor or sarcasm. It could include benefits, and it could include maybe some kind of promise. But these are the things that you want to think about when you're creating a title. Now, again, a title doesn't need to tell them everything. That's the job of a subtitle. So if you've ever wondered why somebody would add a subtitle, this is why. Their title is to create that curiosity and intrigue, while the subtitle is to tell them what it's about. 7 steps to lose weight. Maybe the title is Fat for Life or something that would create curiosity, but the book is about 7 steps to lose weight. Now, different from that would be a tagline or log line. Now, these are mostly used with fiction or memoir type books. Taglines are similar to like a famous saying by an actor or someone in the public purview where everybody knows that who said, "Here's looking at you, kid." That would be a tagline or a log line. Take for instance my books. They are the Superhero School series, so that's a series title. It tells them that they are all connected together by the theme of the superhero schools. But my tagline is Finding the Superhero in You. Now, they are kids' books, but this is something that speaks to kids to give them an idea of what they're going to be learning or the underlying message inside the book. So again, fiction would normally use a subtitle, although it's not against the rules, but it's not common. So instead, we would use a tagline or a log line to give them a little bit more information. So I know that this is a very complicated, complex situation, and there are many apps out there that will help you find good titles. I would say that the best thing to do is to think about the important points of your book and to try and find something that resonates with your audience, the intersection between what you're saying and what they need to know. And to also go look at some of your competition and the way that they are titling their books. You don't want to have yours similarly titled so there's confusion in the market, but you want to be in line with the other books in your genre. So I know it's complicated. I know it's a lot more complex than that, but I hope this at least gives you some jumping off points to work on when you're struggling with figuring out a title, a subtitle, a series title, a log line, a tagline, or any of the above. So let's go ahead and move on, and we're going to get into our interview with Allan. He is a physicist, engineer, and author, and we are going to be talking about his book. It is coming out next month. Woo, I get a preview of his book. I'm very excited about it. It's called Discovering the Rules to 3D Chess. Allan is a physicist, engineer, and author. He first encountered paradigms in college in a philosophy class. It resonated with his skepticism for straight line moves. Something more was required. Now there was a scientific reason to suppose a solution existed. Through many obstacles and hidden assumptions, he never gave up on the idea. His commitment to solve the puzzle became a labor of love in pursuit of a paradigm. His great joy is the epiphany, that moment when the mental light bulb goes off and a new concept snaps into clear relief. Allan lives in the Sacramento area with his wife and daughters. Welcome to the Writer's Parachute, Allan. How are you today?
Thank you very much, Donna.
Well, I wanted to talk about this book. Now, I kind of have been a little bit behind the scenes on this book, so I've read a couple of iterations of the book, but I'm very excited about it, and I really wanted to bring it to my audience. So, Discovering the Rules to 3D Chess is about exploring how to play the game in a way that makes it considered still chess as we know it, which was kind of a hard thing for me to wrap my head around, but after reading it, I sort of get where you're going with that. So I want to know, how does this book differ from other books that are out there on the market about three-dimensional chess?
Well, 3D chess actually has quite a long history, going back maybe 60 or 80 years. It's been an intriguing problem. Quite a few researchers have tackled it. There's a wide range of solutions, but they all suffer from one main defect. You can't win a game with this one pawn advantage. And that is a fundamental aspect of 2D chess. And the reason turns out to be that you have to give up on the idea of trajectory. Pieces don't move in straight lines. They have to move in flat planes. You've promoted the board by a dimension. You have to promote the move by a dimension. And it was that insight that got me started on this. But what is a planar move? How are you going to define blocking? So the breakthrough idea seemed to me rather obvious as a teenager, but no one else had tackled it, and the decades went by and no one else had tackled it. And slowly throughout my somewhat eclectic career, I began to understand why. And when it came time to write this book, it finally hit me. We don't want to invent another way of moving chess pieces around a 3D board. We want to discover the rules. What hidden assumptions do we have to question and wrestle with before it happens? And that turned out to be planar moves with this thing called an advancement square. You don't move in straight lines. You move into a square that you add a perimeter at a time to. And it is that n by n array of tiles, generic term for squares or cubes, that has to be empty for the move to be legal, just like in 2D, it's a straight line that has to be empty. So that means we could extend these rules to 4D very naturally. And that became one of our criteria was, can we come up with a set of rules that are dimension agnostic as a way to keep us on the discovery path and, kind of deny us the temptation of invention?
Okay, well, what I remember about 3D chess, kind of on the periphery of what I know, I'm not a scientist, I'm not an engineer, so was, mentioning being in Star Trek, and chess has become very popular because of, the show The Queen's Gambit about a year ago. So why was it important at this moment to bring this book forward? Was it because this discovery happened, or is it because this is the right moment for people to learn?
Well, I had a successful paper on quantum tic-tac-toe with the American Journal of Physics. And I thought that the pedagogy it provided in the classroom for learning about quantum physics without any math was pretty potent. It actually has now been referenced, 30 or 40 times. So it's kind of started the whole field of quantum games. And I thought that 3D chess had something to say about physics and about thinking out of the box, in particular, the importance of paradigms. And so I submitted a paper I wrote a paper and then contacted the American Journal of Physics, and they said, don't bother sending it in. We won't review it. And if you want to write about physics, write about physics. Don't write about a game that nobody knows. We can't connect it with the audience. And they have a point. But I was a little pissed.
Well, sometimes
getting pissed, sometimes getting rejected is just the motivation you need. And so, well, screw that. I'm going to dive into this until I can make a case. And as I dove into it, I realized, oh, wait a minute, this is way too big for a paper. I can't get this across in a paper. What was I thinking? And so, okay, it's time to write the book. And I then went to the effort of learning how to use software that could illustrate this game. I created the templates and I started laying out positions, and shocker of shockers, I didn't know this game as well as I thought I did. And there was a lot I didn't know. And very early in writing the book, it became apparent that the game was teaching me its rules.
Wow.
And I was simply transcribing something that was out there. And that's when this idea of discovery versus invention really kind of settled in. Now, my task is to discover the rules. And we actually set ourselves out the audacious objective of, we're going to find the one right rule set, which, given that, several dozen versions of 3D chess have been patented over the last 40 years, is borders on arrogance. But I think we can make a good case for it. And my programming intern, when he found out about the book and was looking for a project to do, said, okay, Goff, convince me. I dare you. Convince me that you have the one right rule set. And after a couple of days, he went, damn, you might. Okay, let's start coding this thing up. So he was able to give us the core of a program that allowed us to check some things that were difficult to check manually. And now, after 15 months or something of fairly focused effort, it's all settled out. It's bigger than I wanted it to be, but this is what was required to claim. This is the rules that will feel like chess. Here's the ones we considered and rejected. Here's why it's at least close to the one right rule set. Okay. And we'll get to the rest later, because there's more.
Okay. Well, and you did talk about the book being big, and it is big. I will tell you that it is a big book, but I found it very readable and easy to understand for people who are non-tech or non-scientific readers. And I wanted to know why that was an important element that you added to the book. You made this for pretty much everyone to understand what you're talking about. This is not just something for a science journal.
Let me see if I can articulate a decent answer to that.
Okay.
When I was in high school, my parents thought it wise to buy me one weekend a 3-level game of chess. It kept me occupied for most of the afternoon. It was painfully obvious that it should have been 8 by 8 by 8, not 8 by 8 by 3. And I had this idea that they're going to have to move in planes because the straight lines won't cut the board. If you know a little bit about chess, you probably know how the rook moves. That's the one that's horizontal and vertical. If you put a lone rook on the middle of an empty chessboard, those pair of moves, up and down, left and right, cut the board into 4 quadrants. The opposing king will be trapped in one of those. So your objective to win the game now is just to use your king and rook to shrink that area until there's nothing left, and now you've mated him. So if you think of the 2D board as a square of squares, the 3D board should be a cube of cubes, 8 by 8 by 8. If you take your rook and you put it in the middle of that board and mark out all the squares you can get to in one move as straight lines, they don't cut the board anymore. So there goes your mate. You can't
Right.
even mate with two rooks. It's really sad. I mean, the games are all draws. Okay.
Mhm.
You've upgraded the board by a dimension. You need to upgrade the move by a dimension. So now what you do is you let that rook move to any square in this vertical plane, any square in that vertical plane, any square in that horizontal plane. And that divides the board into 8 quadrants now instead of 4.
Mhm.
But with exactly the same algorithm, you can now mate that king.
Mhm.
The end game works out exactly the same.
Right. Well, and see,
So,
I think your explanation right there, and I'm sorry I cut you off, but I think your explanation just proves my point. It's understandable. It isn't just a lot of physics or engineering or scientific jargon where I would be lost, because that was my fear initially when I was reading this, is like, I'm just going to be lost after page 2.
well, for me, I like it when the light bulb comes on. One of my analogies is you're standing in a forest, it's all very confusing, and you turn just a little bit and all the trees line up. And you go, oh, I'm not in a forest, I'm in an orchard. There's a pattern here.
Mhm.
Okay. And paradigm is from the Greek word for pattern, and it applies to the mental models we bring to interpreting reality. And these mental models are great shortcuts. They're very efficient when they are appropriate, and they are very blinding when they're not. And we all have this idea that a thing moves along a path.
Right.
And so when we went to 3D chess, we all had the pieces move along a path, and that doesn't work. They now have to move in a non-path, a plane,
Mhm.
and I call that the trajectory paradigm.
Mhm.
And guess what? That's the way motion is in physical reality. In quantum physics, it isn't continuous, it's discontinuous. An electron in an excited orbital, when it de-excites, it's then in the lower orbital, and it is never, ever anywhere in between.
So I have a sneaky suspicion that somewhere underneath all of this story about 3D chess, which is extraordinarily interesting because you don't see books about it too often, and you certainly don't see books of this nature that are easily readable. So, is there some small part of you that is trying to make physics, engineering, and science a little more palatable for the regular person?
Indeed, and that's part of my teaching background. Okay, I love watching the light bulb go off in someone else's head almost as much as I like it when it goes off in my own. Okay, that's very satisfying. But we have these paradigms really limit us. A terribly easy example is for anybody out there who has a stove. Anybody out here who has 4 burners on their stove. Those 4 burners are probably arranged 2 by 2. You have 4 controls, 1 control for each burner. They're probably arranged 1 by 4. Excuse me? You never get left and right confused. But
Right.
even after using this stove for years, do you know which control is front and back?
No, I never
No.
do. I always turn on the
Okay.
wrong one.
They have to give you a map. You actually have to look at the control and say, oh, well, that's the front one, that's the back one. A well-designed one will make these a trapezoid, so the linear works. Or you might have the 4 controls 2 by 2 off to the side and the 4 burners. That's a natural mapping. So these assumptions, these shortcuts really handicap our creativity, our ability to understand things. And I am passionate about getting people to be better at thinking out of the box.
See, that's what I wanted to hear. I love that answer. So you emphasize throughout the book, and it is in your title, the word discover. And I want to know why it is discover and not rules.
The Greeks were very good at inventing things,
Mhm.
but they didn't figure out the scientific method
Right?
because their emphasis was on inventing from beauty and purity and abstraction,
Mhm.
not from going out in the messy world and finding out what actually is. It was the adherence to discovery that finally launched the scientific method. Not authority, not philosophy, not dogma. What is actually out there, and let's test it. And what we have found over and over and over again is that we invent fictions, we invent stories to explain reality, and sometimes it's the wrong story. And for 3D chess, straight line moves, trajectories, are the wrong story. It's this planar move.
Mhm.
And so you find that your pieces are now almost moving like a quantum object. And when I noticed that, I started looking for examples in 3D chess of quantum analogs. We got polarized rooks. We got wave particle duality. We have fermions and bosons. I'm going, how did this stuff all come up here? I didn't add this in.
Mhm.
This is just coming out of getting that one paradigm right, not straight lines, planar moves, which is why you really have to have as many figures in this book as we have. And part of why it's so big is I can't communicate a planar move in words anywhere near as well as you could communicate a straight line move in weird words. So we got 265 figures. Many of them are full page. They're in color, trying to make it easy for you to program your brain to see this new way of moving, because there isn't another game out there that has a move like this. Who would invent something like this?
Right.
No, it was forced upon us by a commitment to discover rules that felt like chess. And felt like chess meant a one pawn advantage had to win. The end games had to work out the same. All the gambits of the mid game had to have a similar feel. All the tension in the opening, all the strategies still had to be there. And I think we nailed it.
I have to agree. I really think you did nail it, and I'm with you. I learned so many things. It's like I'm an occasional chess player. I've taught my grandkids and my children to play chess, and we love doing it. I am nowhere near at the level that anybody would be to play this. I play it for fun, but I learned a lot of things that I didn't even realize about two-dimensional chess and three-dimensional chess, and you made it very easy to learn, and I do appreciate that. So you also have like an extraordinarily amazing story behind the book and the passion that you've had to kind of solve this conundrum with the three-dimensional chess, and it goes all the way back to your childhood. Can you share that with us, because I thought this was just an amazing story.
Well, I had just won the chess championship in my high school as a junior. I shouldn't have. I was getting soundly trounced by the best chess player in school, and I was desperate. And then I saw a trap that I could set up, and uncharacteristically, he fell in it, and I got his queen. And after that, being very, very, very careful not to make any further mistakes, I finally eked out a bare victory over this gentleman. And he was a senior. It was his last year. He really should have had this. I kind of felt bad. But you don't give up. You face an obstacle, you pull into your creativity, you try to pull it out. So my parents bought me that 3-level chess set, which was just, I mean, it was a marketing thing, okay, and they thought it would be good, and it was very thoughtful of them to do it, but it was clearly not the right idea. And over the years, I guess the next thing was in college when I met a couple of mathematicians my freshman year, and one evening we were talking about 3D chess, and I was able to convince them in short order that the straight line move was bogus, and they bought it. They said, "Oh wow, this really sounds interesting. We should explore this." Well, they were much more committed to it than I was, because I came back from classes the next day, and I opened the door to my room, and there was this contraption hanging from the ceiling with a 3D chessboard made out of pizza cartons, used, I might add, stains and all. But they had found a wrapping paper with a chess pattern that just fit over these. And so they had laid this on every level and suspended it from the ceiling on strings. And here they had an 8x8x8 chessboard, which, by the way, I still have. It's hiding in my den so my wife can't see it. But over the coming months, we explored what this idea of a planar move was like, and there were several variations, and they all felt incomplete. We were onto something, but it wasn't quite there. And eventually I replaced it with a real plexiglass board and really started exploring and found out there was a lot of things I didn't know about this. It took us forever to get the knight move right. You know, you just find the knight move, it's that L shape. Well, it moves like a rook and then a bishop, or it makes 2 moves as a rook and then 1 to the left. And there's lots of different ways to describe it. And those all turn out to be useless when you go to 3D. The right way to describe the knight's move is it is the anti-queen. If you take a queen and you put it in the center of a 5x5 array of squares, and you mark out all the squares it can get to, there are 8 it can't. and those 8 are the knight's move.
Mhm.
Which means from a tactical perspective, the knight is the only piece that can attack a queen without being attacked in return. So when you go from a square of squares to a cube of cubes, you have to add a new piece because the rook moved through the sides or the faces, the bishop moved through the corners or the edges, but now you got these vertices. So we invent a new piece. It's called the duke. Other people invented the same piece, have called it differently. But if you now take your queen and put it in the middle of a 5 by 5 by 5 cube, and you mark out all the squares she can get to as a rook, a bishop, or a duke, there's 24 squares left that she can't get to. And if you define that as the knight's move, you have the 2D knight move on every face of that cube.
Wow.
So one of our criteria for discovery, one of our criteria for feels like chess was, does our 3D move project back onto 2D and give us the 2D move back? Yes, 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 yes.
This has been an amazing journey, and like I said, I always feel like I'm going to school, but fun school, when I'm reading your book. So I did love it. I know initially when I got it, I was just like, I know my brain's going to explode. I'm just going to just go, I can't. But you did an amazing job of making it easy to read, very understandable, to the point to where I got it, even without all of the, the alphabets behind my name about being, a scientist and engineer or physicist or anything, or knowing much about any of those fields. It's like I still could get it. And I have to tell you, the graphics that you added to this book really brought everything home. So I do have to applaud you on those. Those really made this a readable book, an understandable book. And I would go out on a limb and see that this is going to be a handbook for people going on into the future trying to play 3D chess.
I'm hoping, and that is part of why it is so big. I wanted to justify every option, show that the alternatives didn't work, so nobody else wasted time going that way. If I've done a good job, and we've invented a lot of jargon, so it's easy to talk about, and there are tables in there that encapsulate all that jargon, then it is the canon for 3D chess. Not that there aren't some edge cases where we might change our minds going forward, but if you can't get everyone to agree basically on the rules, you don't have a game, because they're all playing something different, and it can't take off. It can't get any momentum. So I have gone to a lot of trouble, I hope correctly, to give us a good foundation to go from that actually has legs in the future. And I got my first practice when I tried to patent the thing.
Oh, wow. So can you share with us a little bit about what happened when you tried to patent this? Because that would be curious to know about.
I got denied twice.
Oh.
I did a little research, and I came to find out that lots of people had patented 3D chess. And there was one patent clerk, one and only one, the same guy who had approved the previous 24. So naturally, I called him up on the phone. And after about 20 minutes of talking, kind of like we are here, I heard it 3,000 miles away. The light bulb went off. He got it. He goes, "Oh, that is different. It's maybe uniquely unique." And then he paused. He said, "You may even be right." Duh. I got my patent.
Well, we are so very happy that you have been persistent with this conundrum and this trying to figure out 3D chess since you were a teenager. So I want to know kind of what crucial concepts do you think that readers need to know before they read the book?
You do not have to be a chess master. All right. You should know the rules. You don't have to know openings. You don't have to know most of the end games, like anyone who really wants to up their score would, but you probably should be able to figure out that single rook and king against a lone king. Okay. If you don't know that one, it's 30 minutes to figure it out, either with your own board or just look up something on the web. But that is kind of the point of our paradigm spear, if you will. Okay, once you understand that those straight lines cut the board, and they don't in 3D, but the planes will, then everything else flows from that. Because everything you learn about the rook applies to the bishop, applies to the duke. Inverted, it applies to the knight. Of course, The queen is just the sum of all those base pieces. And bit by bit, we work our way up from the rook to all the other pieces, the pieces that are built on them, finally to the pawns, and finally to the king, which I probably had wrong 5 or 6 times before I finally found the right rule set. I didn't have the courage to let it have a full 3D nature. Then I let it have the wrong full 3D nature and nothing worked out. And it was just try one thing, try one thing, try one thing, until finally I realized that it wasn't this rule or that rule in 2D, 2 different ways of saying the same thing. I actually had to combine those 2 rules. They both applied. You didn't need both in 2D. Either one would give you the right move. So whichever one I used in 3D didn't work, but when I combined them, put them together, then we got a rule that worked.
Right. Well, that sounds amazing. And like I said, from reading your book, I will tell you that I believe that anybody that has even a small understanding of chess and playing chess will get a myriad of information and will discover things that they never known. And and I love the fact that it was a fun, easy read. Your humor and your sarcasm and your epiphanies really come through in the book. I think I laughed as much as I scratched my head, which was fun. It's not something you would expect. So I did love that about your book. So kudos on that. So we're going to talk a little bit about a couple of things here. So you said that discovery and science, that they rarely happen in straight lines, which is kind of what you're talking about, the difference between the 2D and 3D chess. So I want to know what surprised you the most about the evolution of 2D to 3D, and what do you think was your greatest challenge?
Well, we talked about the knight. That took me a while. Okay. There were additional surprises. The rook moves in 2 lines in 2D. So does the bishop. When you go to 3D, the rook moves in 3 planes, but the bishop moves in 4.
Okay.
And the duke moves in 6.
Oh my.
And the bishop doesn't have 4 quadrants in its plane. It has 6. But the duke only has 4 again.
Oh no.
Okay. The bishop can only get to half the tiles on the board. Tiles is a generic term for square or cube, depending on context. It just made writing it a lot easier. It actually makes thinking about it a little easier. The duke can only get to a quarter of the tiles on the board. Half as many as the bishop, which is half as many as the rook, which meant if we went to 4D, that 4th base piece can only get to an 1/8. So there's some mathematical beauty hiding in there I didn't originally say. And it turned out that you pretty much need to specify 4 colors for the duke. Each duke is on only one of those, but they're half on the white tiles and half on the black ones. So you needed an 8 color board to capture both the bishop and the duke, and it was absolutely unworkable and completely psychedelic.
Well, you explain that now, and I'm recalling some of the graphs in the book, and it's like I can see where that would make your head spin after a while trying to color code.
So eventually, having gone to the trouble to learn Inkscape, one of these free graphics programs, okay, the tiles, I didn't make them infinitely thin anymore. I made them actually like tiles, a little bit of thickness. And so the top surface is white or black. That's what you're used to.
Right.
But that side surface, I then put the duke colors there. Now, most of those are hidden, but you can raise a tile up in the software to highlight it.
Okay.
It's just a little bit higher, and you can see whether that duke is a gold duke or a silver duke, or whether it's a ruby or a jade. And we went to the periodic table of the elements because the duke planes that you're going to think about the most are either gold and silver or ruby and jade. They're either metallic or they're gemstone.
Right.
And so being really inventive with our choice of names makes it easier to think about the game and to think about how the pieces move.
Okay. Well, honestly, I think what you need to do is to follow up this book with a lesson on how to just make these graphs, because I've read many books with graphics in them, and a lot of times I just kind of avoid them because they confuse me even more, where yours didn't. And I love the fact that you did spend the time to figure this out, because I could read what you said and then I could look at the graph and go, oh, okay, now it makes sense. Whereas a lot of times when you look at these graphs, you're just like, wait, what? Let me go read that again.
So basically the board, the figures of the board in the book are black and white.
Mhm.
But what we put on each of those tiles is a little diamond shaped decorator, that, because the best way to look at this is from kind of on it, not on edge, but I don't know if you could see. Let me show you. Let me show this again. All right. Do you see where the pieces start vertically on the edges?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So that's that neutral perspective between white and black
Mhm.
that we're looking at. So on each of the tiles, we can put a little decorator. So rook is always red,
Mhm.
bishop is always green, duke is always blue, the
Okay.
knight is yellow,
Mhm.
king and the queen are purple because they're royalty, right?
Sure.
Okay. And by adding some little nuances to those decorators, we can make other things clear that are important, which we won't go into here. But it made it a lot easier to understand what was going on. And eventually I just created templates
Mhm.
and then saved how all the pieces moved. And when I wanted to show a position, I would just go into the list and say, don't show, don't show, don't show, don't show.
Well, yeah,
And then boom, there was the pattern. You could see it.
right. Yes, it's very clear. And I do think that your book would not be as amazing as it is without these graphics. And I do want to thank you for spending so much time and making them so very clear and understandable, because the combination of those graphics and your easy to understand explanations really brought home for me the idea of playing three-dimensional chess, which I'd never really even considered. I figured it was something that was only, in the Star Trek universe. Because again, I remember when you and I first talked about it, I'm like, oh, he's talking about that, fictional game that was played by, Spock and some of the other cast members when they were on, the Star Trek show. So I'm glad to know that it's actually real and possible. So thank
That
you.
was a beautiful prop. It has only 64 squares.
Ah,
Okay, same as a regular chessboard. This has 512, which at first you might think, oh my gosh.
right.
But it's just all more of the same once you get the basic concepts down.
Mhm.
And technically, the game in Star Trek is not 3D chess; it's space chess.
Ah,
Those 4 2x2 boards off to the side, you can actually pull them off and move them. You can
ah.
actually move pieces of the board in that game, which is
Mhm.
just slicker and whatever.
Well, see, now I didn't even know that. I just thought they were one and the same. So, see, I'm learning something every single time. So, we're going to shift gears just a little bit here and talk about you as an author and a writer. So, we know that most authors and writers experience some kind of obstacle or challenge when they're writing and publishing their book. So, I want to know, what was the biggest challenge for you in writing and publishing this book? And what do you think you learned from
Well, there were all the tools to learn.
it? Mhm.
So there were a lot of learning curves.
Right.
Okay. Word is very powerful, and I've been using its advanced features and mastering them. So the thing that made it easiest on me to write the book was getting navigation to work. So careful use of headings and subheadings,
Mhm.
uh, and merging them with numbered lists,
Mhm.
so that in the navigation panel on the left, I can collapse
Mhm.
so I can see the forest, and then I can expand and get
Mhm.
down to the tree.
Right.
Um, hyperlinks. So I have a table of jargon.
Mhm.
So I can go to that jargon. I can add something that I've invented. I can link it to a bookmark. I can click on it. It takes me to that part of the text. Did I really explain this the way I wanted to? And finally, I figured out the correct way to use words indexing. Do not do this manually.
Right.
Okay. It will not capture any changes you make later. What you
Mhm.
have to make is a concordance, a separate file that
Mhm.
consists of a 2-column table that
Mhm.
you put in what you search for, what the word is going to be that's going to be defined in the index, and then the subtext. And then you run the automark feature of Word, and it will do this for your entire document in a few minutes. So
Wow.
I have this very professional looking index at the end of my book. That's not hyperlinked,
Mhm.
even in the Kindle version, but there's a lot of numbers behind some of the jargon. And
Mhm.
I realize that what this is doing, it's a proxy for what are the most important concepts in the book. So while you don't normally read an index,
Yeah.
okay, it is actually useful to flip in the back
Mhm.
and, oh, that's right. We're going to talk about advancement squares a whole lot. Oh,
Mhm.
that's right. There's this new piece called the Duke. Okay, so here's all. Okay. Oh, he talks about forks and discovers it. What's a quark?
Mhm.
Well, in 3D, you have some new types of ways of doing forks,
Mhm.
and we needed to give them a name because they're like it, but they're not the same. Something the queen can do. So Q for queen, quark because it rhymes with fork. We've tried to put a lot of effort. We've put a lot of effort into coming up with good jargon that's memorable because it's too complicated to describe every situation with a phrase or a sentence. You need a single word that snaps that concept into your consciousness.
Right. And I do love the idea of this index, which is why I think that it's going to become a reference book for people because while you can read the book from cover to cover, and I hope that you do, I think that in the future, when people start trying to play 3D chess, that they will be able to go to that index and get them to the actual discussion throughout the book about certain aspects, especially if there's a question of how does this piece move or why it can't do this or that. So I did appreciate that you can jump around in the book very easily and find what you're looking for without having to go, oh, I know it's in here somewhere.
Well, one of the things I'm hoping for in this book is that the AI community, having now soundly trounced human beings with their latest silicon creations, will see in 3D chess an increase in challenge, several orders of magnitude, more difficult problem. And it's an interesting question for me, if anyone wants to rise to the bait here, if there will ever be a 3D chess human
Mhm.
master
Ah.
or whether that title will always belong in the land of the machines. So I'm kind of willing to challenge the AI community to write a 3D chess playing program
Mhm.
and then ask if there's any humans who think they might have a shot at beating it. And the reason we might, okay,
Mhm.
is because our brains are already wired for a 3D reality.
Yes.
When you play flat chess, sorry, you're not using all of your brain cells. When you go to 3D chess, our perceptual system evolved for a 3D reality.
Mhm.
So we may have an initial edge on the machines, and it would be interesting to see if we can pull that off.
Right. Well, it's definitely going to be a challenge. And boy, you really laid the gauntlet down for everyone. So I want to know, who do you think this book is for? I know who I think it's for, but who you think it's for?
Okay, so people who like to think,
Mhm.
people who want to learn to think out of the box. This makes a really good use case for identifying hidden assumptions, for questioning the paradigm, for having the courage to see it through to the end until it finally all clicks. I have shown this game to maybe several hundred people.
Mhm.
And on a couple of occasions, I've been able to lead them to the planar move and they get all excited. And then I've watched some of them walk away
Mhm.
because they can't figure out a trajectory that will work
Mhm.
and they can't let go of the idea of a trajectory.
Mhm.
So wrestling wrestling with these paradigms that handicap our thinking
Mhm.
and constrain us to suboptimal solutions is a real important skill set to develop. So that's one group of people.
Mhm.
Anyone who's interested in quantum physics, the ease with which the quantum phenomena showed up still shocks me. I found 16 analogs in the course of writing the book, and it's like, these shouldn't be here. They they were a surprise. And then just because I can't resist going that extra mile, I took a look at one more invariant, one more pair of degenerate rules, and I realized that if I took the other one, I got a game of quantum 3D chess. And quite literally, it means dropping a rule. This is crazy. Quantum is always more complicated than classical, and yet in some formal sense, there's one less rule for quantum 3D chess than there is. So the last chapter, for those who just are just in love with the quantum phenomena and mesmerized by its non-intuitive nature and why it's so hard to struggle with, in this last chapter, we'll take a look at quantum 3D chess. Not that you're ever going to play it, but what is this connection between classical and quantum? Why, after 90 years, we still haven't solved the measurement problem in quantum physics? Why, of all the paradigms that science has been able to get through, is this one still tied to the last one? Nobody, well, if you're doing relativity, you know that Newton's theory of gravity is wrong. You may use it because it's practical, but you know it's wrong and you don't think about it or do the math the same way in relativity. But in quantum physics, we have to go back to classical physics. We have to use classical momentum. We have to use classical linearity. It's annoying. There's something we don't get. This is why Feynman said nobody understands quantum mechanics. And he was the youngest scientist on the Manhattan Project to develop the atom bomb. He came up with the QED theory. He was a master of his craft. And he says, don't ask how it can be this way. Nobody knows. It's a black hole from which no one has returned. And that to me is an irresistible challenge. So I had to write up this last chapter on quantum 3D chess. It showed up so effortlessly. And I was looking for something in the course of writing this last chapter. Is there an objective measurement mechanism? Is there something that will collapse? And I'm to the very last few pages and I haven't found it yet.
So
and I've written this whole book
for a new book.
Okay, all right, and then there it was on those figures looking at me and going, that's 2 boards. I can't represent the state of a quantum game on a single board. See, in any game, the locations of the pieces tell you the state. The rules tell you what the next possible states are. Those are the legal moves. But the condition of the game at that moment is encoded in where the pieces are. And that's true for 2D chess, Monopoly, cards, all of it. In 3D chess, I found situations, in quantum 3D chess, I found situations where the exact same quantum pieces did not represent the same state. I had to have 2 boards. And that is the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. So for those of you who are interested in quantum physics and have struggled, what is this many worlds thing? How does it relate to Copenhagen? All the quantum stuff. You're going to have in front of you a great mental image, an intuitive understanding of this concept that has taken a long time to become mainstream in quantum physics. And that's the final figure of the book. 2 quantum 3D boards next to each other, 2 different worlds.
There you go. Well, and I agree with you, but I think you do have another audience for your book. And there are people like me who like to play chess, are interested in playing chess, and they want to know more. They want to be able to intelligently talk about this idea of 3-dimensional chess. So I think if you have any interest, if you have anyone in your family, again, that are interested in all of these things, that, you want to get them interested in, physics and science and engineering and mathematics, I think this would be an amazing gift for them.
I think the gift idea is right on the money, Donna. I think this is one of the things that somebody is going to appreciate this. And if you give it to them as a gift, they're likely to dive in. And then you can watch the light bulb go on. You can see them running to you. You've got to see this. You don't believe how this works out.
Right. And I think that's great. I think this book would be great for any budding chess aficionado that is out there that wants to learn more, that wants to expand their ideas around how the game is played. But I also think that there is an inherent spark within your book to want to know more about the science and the math and the collection of all the ideas to get to this point. So you've done an amazing job as a teacher to not only spark that imagination and curiosity in the reader, you've also given them very concrete pathway of learning, which, as you know, as a former teacher myself, that's always, you know, the point that we're looking for is that teaching moment, and it's definitely in your book. So what is the one message that you hope, underneath all of the talking and all of the science and all the physics, what is it that you hope people gain from your book?
Well, there's three themes. There's chess, there's paradigms, there's quantum physics.
Mhm.
So what I like people to come away from this, become a more critical thinker, become more skeptical of arguments. I'm not asking you to question logic, but I am asking you to question the hidden assumptions. I want you to hunt for the hidden assumptions. I want you to look for ways, what we call degenerate invariants, two different ways of describing the same thing that in one level of abstraction are the same, but in a higher level of abstraction, they diverge. And so what you'll find out is that one of these was actually the better way to think about it, but it's often the one that's harder to articulate. And so we always think about it the wrong way,
Mhm.
which works just fine down here,
Mhm.
but it doesn't work up here.
Mhm. Right. So think more critically instead of in sound bites. Is that what you're saying?
Take your time, wrestle with it. Okay. One of Einstein's great gifts, he wasn't that fast.
Mhm.
All right. He just had a way of approaching problems with a childlike innocence.
Mhm.
He didn't have a lot of hidden assumptions. He was able to leave those behind
Mhm.
and then bring to the problem all the power of an adult mind.
Right. Which is a great lesson in and of itself, is sometimes we trip ourselves up with all the things that we think we already know and can't see the solution that's right in front of us.
What was that quote? It's not the things we don't know that trip us up. It's the things we know that just aren't so.
Exactly. Well, it is a great legacy, and I can imagine that this book is going to do amazingly well. It is out on October the 1st. We will have a pre-order link for listeners in the show notes for you. I highly encourage you to go out and get your own copy of Allan Goff's Discovering the Rules to 3D Chess. I think it will be an amazing read, whether you're completely into chess or science or physics or engineering or math or any of it, or if you're just curious at how all this stuff works. It is an amazing read. So, what is next for you?
Well, I have several books in the pipeline.
Okay.
Actually, there was one before this.
Hmm.
And in the course of that storyline, I needed my characters to wrestle with a paradigm shift. And I thought, well, 3D chess gives us a real good example of this. I'll just roll this into the story. And that kind of reminded me I hadn't finished this.
Uh-huh.
So I figured, okay, I'll whip out a couple of quick papers for the American Journal of Physics, and then I'll get back to this other book, Paradigm of Paradox. And it didn't happen that fast. So this book is coming out first. The second thing is we need a game.
Hmm.
All right. You can build a board, whether it's out of pizza cardboard or plexiglass. All right.
Hmm.
But it's a little tedious to lay out all the moves and to see them. Whereas a computer can just snap, crackle, and pop. You see it immediately. So it's a much faster way to program your brain to see the moves if we can do this on a computer. So what I'm going to probably do next is take a stab at writing the program that people can play and, more importantly, explore. It's going to show you why that move is legal, why that block has this particular property. How is it that I can't attack either piece because they're both blocking the attack on the other,
Hmm.
which doesn't happen in 2D chess.
Right.
Blocks are always one way, but there are a few situations in 3D chess where you have mutual blocks, which means they're also mutual pins. And software, if it's done well,
Mhm.
can help people see that. In fact, probably the best way to play this game is with computer support, not a kibitzer, but just something that helps you visualize it. And part of the, I guess, why the timing is working out is the technology has caught up. Our large flat screens are perfect for this. We have enough computing power to do this. We have decent interfaces for asking the computer to show us this, that, or the other thing. This might be a real good time for this to come out.
Awesome. So another challenge that he's going to lay down is for all of you computer programmers is to beat him to the punch of writing a new program for this. So we wish you well on that. So I just have one more question about being here on the writer's parachute. And we want to know what 3 things you really wish you had known or that someone had told you before you began writing and publishing your book.
Absolutely nothing. I do not, I am so happy they did not teach me the 3, 4, 5, 6 things that I needed to know. It's like the lines at Disneyland.
Mhm.
If you knew how long that thing was, you wouldn't get in it. They hide it on these curvy little paths with walls and distractions. Okay. If I had known how much I had to learn to do this, I probably would have done something else. I'd have stayed with the original book instead of going down this path. But each new mastery taught me more about this game, and I realized how incompletely I understood my quote unquote own creation.
Mhm.
Most of the time it felt like this game was teaching me the rules itself. It was surreal. So yeah, I'm glad nobody told me the things I needed to know.
Well, there you go. Sometimes ignorance is bliss, and I will agree with you. Sometimes too much information can kind of instill that fear. So, with
But your Shut Up and Write group
aw,
has helped quickly cover those things I didn't know.
well, excuse me,
So
I
they
appreciate that.
didn't bite me, but I didn't learn about them until I needed to learn about them. And that turned out to be useful.
Well, and sometimes that is best. It's like while we do talk about all the different things here on the show, sometimes too much information in the beginning can make it very daunting. Whereas, what do I always tell you guys? It's like eating an elephant. We just do it one bite at a time, and we worry about the rest of the elephant when we get to it. So, so we want to know where our listeners can get a copy of your book. As we said, we're going to have the pre-order for Amazon up for you in the show notes. But where else do you plan to have your book available?
At the moment, it is available or will be available October 1st on Amazon.com.
Mhm.
It will be available as an ebook for a very reasonable price. Um, we are, it's formatted in the last common ancestor format here in Word
Mhm.
for an 8.5 by 11 print version.
Okay.
We're still negotiating with how we're going to do that. One more set of things I didn't know up front that
Mhm.
I'm learning as I go. But we're probably going to bring it out in print as a spiral bound,
Okay.
not as a conventional bound. And the reason is this is supposed to be kind of a research document. Yes, it's a good read and it'll help you think and all that stuff. But for people who want to play the game or write a program or develop an AI, it's so much nicer if you can lay it out flat. So you
Yeah.
have both hands available for the keyboard or the physical board, whatever. And we have paid a lot of attention to trying to be consistent with description on the left, figure on the right,
Mhm.
except where that just created too much white space because we don't
Right.
want a 600-page book. So sometimes that mixed a little bit. But for most of the full-size figures, they're on the right, description on the left, or you have facing figures so you can see the difference,
Mhm.
how they're the same, how they're different. So it's laid out that way. On the ebook, of course, it's flowing,
Mhm.
but with scalable graphics, you can really zoom in.
Mhm. Okay. Well, so are we hoping to have that available on your website for the Spiral Bound, or is that going to be out into bookstores?
At this point, I don't know. I don't actually have a website. I am social media challenged. And that may be one more learning curve I have to go up to get something out there. For the moment, if we don't have something more accessible and you're desperate to reach us, We do have an email set up on Gmail for Paralog Books. So that's paralogbooks@gmail.com. And I will pay attention to any traffic that shows up there and try to be responsive to folks. And if I am overwhelmed with emails, then very clearly I'd better get some kind of social site up and running just to handle the volume. I would love to have that problem, but we'll see.
All right. Well, again, we'll make sure that we put the paralogbooks@gmail.com in the show notes for you so you can reach out to Allan if you have questions or you want further information or want to contact him about something interesting, such as creating that program for his three-dimensional chess game. So we want to know, as you said, you can't connect yet on social media, but I'm sure you and I will work out to get that up and going for you. So if
I sense an assignment coming here. This is homework.
Yes, I'm going to give you homework. We're going to get that up, and we will try to include that in the show notes for you as we get those. So if you get this episode early, maybe come back and check and see if we've updated the show notes for you. So also we wanted to know if you have any upcoming events that you would like to share with our listeners here.
I'm sorry, I have no upcoming events.
I think we're probably going to create some. I am quite certain that we're probably going to do a book launch for you coming up on October the 1st. Yeah, don't hold your head. We'll get through it. But do look for those. And as I said, we'll update the show notes as we get more information with Allan. Allan is coming in early before his book is out. So we are going to be a little patient with him with some of these things that are not quite ready to go, but we will continue to check back and we will update our show notes as he has those things available. So was there anything else that you wanted to include or wanted to talk about with our audience before we go pull the ripcord on our tip of the week?
Well, assuming that most of your audience are writers, I want to encourage you and not to just go it alone, but to definitely be the master of your own ship. I have found the Shut Up and Write group extraordinarily useful, if for no other reason, and this is underselling it at this point, if for no other reason than the accountability. 2 brief meetings a week. I hate showing up to meetings, not showing progress. And with all these learning curves and all the things I didn't know and the size of this project and the complexity, staying motivated, part of why this is happening now is because of this group of self-help artists who are encouraging each other. So I would encourage you all to find a local one and join it.
Right. And he is so right. There are so many writing groups out there. There is the Shut Up and Write, which is an organization that I work with and that Allan's talking about. They are international. They're around the world. They have meetings online and in person pretty much anywhere across the United States and around the world. You're always welcome to join those. You can go to the Meetup app or you can go to shutupwrite.com and check out the meetings in your local area. Of course, you're always welcome to join any of them. You don't have to go to specifically the ones in your area or your state. You're allowed to join any of them. In fact, I have many that join ours on Mondays and Thursday mornings at 9 a.m. Pacific time from across the United States. And of course, we've had a few international ones show up. So if you're looking for accountability, this is one of the great groups. But then, of course, there are many, many others. I do suggest that if you're struggling and if you're feeling a little lost in a loom, this is a really good thing. We're not talking about teaching about how to write. We're not doing critiques or anything. We're just giving you a safe space to meet every week and be encouraged and to get the actual writing done, or to maybe ask some of your peers about how they did certain things. We're always learning new things and expanding our knowledge. So I appreciate you mentioning that. But let's go ahead and go pull the ripcord on our tip of the week. So we're going to talk about some of the things that Allan brought up. And one of the things that he and I talked about before the show in the green room was about all the aspects of creating a book. Now, Allan has taken this to extreme, and I do applaud him for that because he has learned every single aspect and done it himself. He not only created the book, he imagined it, he created it, he wrote it, he did all of the graphics within the book, he did his own interior layout, he did his own cover design, he did his own setup and everything included. And that is a lot because there are a lot of things that you have to learn that are very technical with each aspect of this. And he's done an amazing job. So I want to talk a little bit about that. If you want to do it on your own, yes, it is possible. Uh, if you are unlike Allan with a very strong background in computers and dealing with programs and stuff like that, that might be a little challenging for your first book. I'm not discouraging you from taking that path, but in some cases, and Allan may agree with me, that you're going to have to pick and choose which battles you're going to take. Otherwise, it extends the time to when you can actually publish your book. And we talked a little bit in the green room about publishing on a deadline. If you're learning all these things, if you're doing all these things and you're not an expert at creating book covers or doing interior layouts or doing all the graphics and stuff like that, this is going to slow you down, and it's going to feel a little bit frustrating when you can't feel that progress. Now, I know for Allan, we've talked about this, that it felt like all of his progress happened at once. And that was because he kind of had, so many dealings in so many different areas doing it all himself. And while I do appreciate that, and it's a goal that I hope to achieve somewhere in my life, I also think that, maybe that's a little too much to bite off if you're a new author. But there are some money saving tips involved in that. There's some reason that people would do that. So again, this is another way that I would say that it's really good to be in a writing group where you can reach out to people like Allan or myself who do have experience and knowledge and maybe some tips and tricks and tools for you if you need to be in that space to save money, or giving you the truth about the things to avoid or how difficult or how easy it may be for you to get through. So,
Donna, if I could amplify on that.
Absolutely.
Our competitive advantage as a species is specialization.
Yes.
So people who are good at art, yeah, you want to consider one of them to do your cover. The cover is real important. If you need good graphics inside and you're not a graphics designer, there is a skill set there that they've spent years acquiring. Spend the money on it. I wholeheartedly support that. For me, in this case, because of the software elements, the physics elements, because I had to invent so many things along the way, the coordination time for an illustrator what was going to be deadly to the project. And yes, I'm a tightwad. I wanted to save money. But having developed the program or the templates of this program to do the illustrations, then extending to the cover wasn't that hard. Right. And having used Word for decades, I knew enough about its advanced features that I didn't feel the need to go to a ghostwriter. I probably could have used more reviewers, however, but finding people to review a 500-page technical book wasn't real easy. So take advantage of, keep it in balance. Use the specialists if you can afford it, and take more time if you feel like you want to try to tackle the challenge of doing most of it yourself.
Right. And I'm just going to add one more thing that people often forget, that we have barterable skills. While you may need an artist to do your cover and to do illustrations, oftentimes those people do not have your skill set as a writer, as somebody who can articulate things. So I have had in the past where I have exchanged my skill set for things that I need. I have exchanged editing. I have exchanged writing, copy for an ad or something like that for an illustrator, or helping them with things where they're required to give an explanation on their website, but maybe they're not good at. Also, I've done interior design that way, where somebody's done the interior layout for me in exchange for other services that I'm able to do. So don't forget that money is the only thing that you can barter with for some of these highly expert things that you will need. And the market, as I've learned, is all over the place. You're going to find people who are in high demand and that are going to demand higher pay. You're going to find people in the middle who are going to be fairly affordable. And then you're going to find the beginners who are not charging as much because they are learning as they go. So you have to decide what your comfort level is. If you're willing to go with a beginner and be patient with them and deal with the errors and mistakes, then yeah, you could save a lot of money. Or maybe you want to spend a little bit more and go with somebody that's already in the middle that has the experience, but not as maybe in high demand as some of the better ones. Or if you need something very, very specific, then you may be willing to pay the higher dollar for the high demand illustrators, interior designers, book cover designers, that sort of thing. There is a plethora of people out there available to help you. Just do your homework and ask questions. If you don't know, then the answer is always going to be no if you don't ask. So
my first few covers were pretty pathetic. Donna was a godsend and saying, nope, nope, nope.
Well, and that's it. Rely on your friends. Your friends are an extraordinary resource, especially your writing friends, but friends in general. They all have ideas and opinions. Most everyone is a reader of some level. And so, just remember to ask the right question. If you go read this book and tell me what you think, then you're just open yourself up to everything. But if you say, can you read this chapter? I want to make sure I'm getting this point across, then that gives them a little more direction. So again, ask the questions, make sure your questions are asked right, but do some research. And again, back to the point, pick and choose your battles, pick and choose what you feel comfortable and confident doing. Again, with your first book, that may be less. As you go on, you're going to be learning more, you're going to be understanding more, you're going to understand how it all works together, and you may be able to take on some of these more challenging aspects of writing and creating your book from start to finish. So I don't want to get too tied up in that. That's just my advice. That's my tip of the week. We want to again thank Allan for being here. We're very excited about his new book that is coming out on October 1st. It is Discovering the Rules to 3D Chess. I highly suggest that you grab that pre-order link that we're going to have in the show notes and go get your copy on order so you make sure you get one when it comes out. Also be checking back for more information about Allan. I fully expect that he is going to be speaking on this a lot, and I suspect we're going to have some video trainings and stuff in our future, but do be checking back for that. And of course, we want you to go ahead and hit that like button, smash the subscribe button, and follow us at Writer Parachute. That's Writer Parachute without an S. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and now on TikTok. We also have a new website for you guys to go find out all the upcoming information about episodes, past episodes, and our guests, and some of the new things that we'll be having coming out here very, very soon. And that is thewritersparachute.com. So go check those out. Thank you again for being here this week, Allan. We are so excited, and we want to, again, remind all of you that we hope all of your writing dreams land well. Until next time, bye.